You probably aren't used to thinking of Salem witches and Plymouth pilgrims together. But who is it that bridges two important moments in Massachusetts and American history, connecting the Mayflower to the Salem witch trials? Welcome back to The Thing About Witch Hunts. I'm Josh Hutchinson.
And I'm Sarah. Here's a Thanksgiving treat from your friendly neighborhood Mayflower and Salem witch trial descendant, while you are preparing that yummy feast.
We hope you're enjoying this Thanksgiving holiday and all the baking and preparation that goes along with it. While you're hustling in the kitchen, we want to talk about a man whose story reveals how social status could mean the difference between life and death during the Salem witch hunt.
That man is Captain John Alden. He was the son of Mayflower passengers, a decorated war hero, successful merchant, and one of the most respected men in Boston. He seemed untouchable. But in 1692, not even his rank in society or his Mayflower parentage could protect him when the accusations came. His experience shows us that witch hunt panic didn't just target the vulnerable and marginalized. It eventually reached even the colonial elite.
So today we're looking at what happened when one of Massachusetts' most prominent citizens found himself accused of witchcraft, and what his story tells us about the machinery of the trials themselves.
Who was Captain John Alden?
He was the son of the youngest signer of the Mayflower Compact. Oh, and that man, John Alden Jr., was the last living Mayflower passenger. He passed just 5 years before the Salem witch trials.
His parents were Mayflower passengers John and Priscilla. Priscilla's family came on the Mayflower and did not make it past that first year. His parents married around 1622 or 1623, making theirs one of the first marriages in Plymouth. They got off the Mayflower and had about 10 children, according to some sources. In fact, their love was immortalized in an 1858 poem, The Courtship of Miles Standish, by their descendant, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. He wrote about a romantic love triangle involving military captain Miles Standish, but historians generally agree it's all fiction. And their marriage went into the 1680s until Mr. Alden became a widow.
Yeah, Priscilla died just 2 years before he did. She died in 1685 and he passed 1687. So they both lived long lives for Mayflower passengers. They had that endurance.
All that time together.
All that time together, they got to spend 60 plus years married to each other. So Captain John Alden, he was born in about 1626. And in 1659, he married Elizabeth Phillips Everell. They had 10, 12, 14 children. We're seeing it different from different sources. They had a whole bunch.
Captain John Alden was a sea captain during King William's War, and he helmed one of the ships of the Massachusetts Navy called the Mary.
So in between October 1688 and April 1692, during King William's War, Alden went up the coast from Boston to northern New England and Acadia 16 times or more on government business. His son, John Alden Jr., was captured in Acadia and eventually ransomed. In July 1690, Alden was ordered to go to Marblehead and get a cannon from them to use in the war effort. This was when Governor Phipps, before he was governor, he was leading the military on an expedition to take Quebec. And so they were rounding up cannons everywhere. But when they got to Marblehead, they beat the drums and all the militiamen came out. There was 60 to 70 men angry that confronted John Alden, and he never got that cannon. But John Alden, some of his other hats that he wore, because he was just chock full of hats, as we'll hear about a little later. He was a fur trader and a merchant.
He was a Bostonian who was a charter member of Reverend Samuel Willard's Third Church in Boston. So far, it sounds, like one of our rich historic stories of the early families, and that he was busy doing a lot in the community. I wonder if there was any controversy.
There was some controversy with him in his career with the military. He was very comfortable and at home all across New England and even into French Acadia. He had long been trading with the English, the French, and Native Americans of the region. And he went up and down the coast doing this trading. So he encountered a lot of different Native peoples. And he often worked in concert with fellow Bostonian John Nelson, who was the leading trader to Acadia. In wartime, these connections brought suspicions, particularly against Nelson, who was an Anglican. So here's a knock against John Alden. He's a friend with an Anglican.
He, like a lot of the men, were in and out of court because they were interpreting contracts and promises different. It was just really common to see men going to court, squabbling over money owed, and of course, accusing each other of non-payments for different things. And if someone was, seething at someone, they might have thrown some extra accusations at them about unsavory behaviors, slander. In January 26 of 1692, which is right at the beginning of the Salem witch trials, he is in court.
Yeah, John Alden was in court on that date in Boston. He was there facing Anthony Checkley, who had some legal background and had represented Captain John Alden in some early court cases that John wasn't able to attend himself. But Checkley was there to sue John for £5 of back pay. Fortunately for Alden, the jury found in his favor, but the court dismissed a different action that Alden had taken, a suit against Mark Emerson for defamation of character. They threw that one out. Emerson was formerly a hostage, and he was a redeemed captive, basically, of the French and Native Americans. He had been captive, and the English redeemed him and got him back. But he had said that while he was in captivity for 2.5 years in Maine, he had seen Alden sell the Indians powder and shot. And so Alden was suing him for defamation for saying that he sold that. And the jury found for Emerson, saying that Alden couldn't prove that that was not true. As Sarah mentioned, January 26, 1692, when Alden was in court, that was right at the start of the Salem witch hunt saga, because this is the time period when Betty Paris and Abigail Williams are afflicted in the household of Samuel Paris, the minister of Salem Village. This is when they have that sickness that's later ruled to be caused by bewitchment and witchcraft. So January was a formative time. It really got things rolling for the witch trials. But by May, there were dozens of people accused, in jail, being examined. And on May 28th, a complaint was filed by Joseph Holton and John Walcott against John Alden, but also a host of other people. Martha Carrier, you might have heard of her. Elizabeth Fosdick, Wilmot Red, Sarah Rice, Elizabeth Howe, William Proctor, John Flood, Mary Toothaker, Margaret Toothaker, and Arthur Abbott.
Margaret was a child.
Margaret was the daughter of Roger Toothaker. So a few days after the complaint was issued, on May 31st, an arrest warrant was issued for Captain John Alden. And according to the warrant, Alden was complained of by a whole series of afflicted people: Mary Walcott, Mercy Lewis, Abigail Williams, Elizabeth Booth, Elizabeth Hubbard, Ann Putnam, and Mary Warren.
The poor, distracted, or possessed creatures or witches. He believed they could have just as well been witches.
Mary Walcott is one of the people named in the warrant as being harmed by John Alden. It was her brother, John, who was one of the two men who filed the complaint against that whole slew of people, including John Alden and Martha Carrier, all those people John Walcott accused on behalf of his sister.
He was arrested, and apparently it was uneventful enough that he did not give a story about it to Robert Califf, who later gives his account. And there's no other real details on it, but we do know the date because an order was sent by Salem magistrates to the prison keeper in Boston.
Yeah, they had arrested him down in Boston and put him in that local jail, and the Salem judges wanted him to come up there for examination. And when he did come up for examination, that was eventful. And he wrote a whole account of this in Robert Califf's book, More Wonders of the Invisible World, which was published 2 years before Alden passed. He passed in 1702, and this was published in 1700.
Yeah, it's a great account, and in it, he refers to himself as senior and emeritor.
And he says, this is a quote from him, those wenches being present who played their juggling tricks, falling down, crying out, and staring in people's faces. That's how he referred to the afflicted people.
In his account, he recalls that the judges asked the afflicted people to identify him, and that one pointed to a Captain Hill until a man whispered in an afflicted girl's ear. Then she pointed out Alden. The truth is, the afflicted, mostly young adults and children, had never met John Alden and may have not recognized him, but they might have known of him. I mean, the family name and all of his dealings with men, businessmen, and soldiers, I bet they did know the name.
They may have heard people talking about him, but in Salem Village, this is inland. This isn't the coastal part of Salem. And these are mainly village girls who are saying that Captain Hill looks like the man that's afflicting them because they just don't actually know what Alden looks like.
That aspect of the accusations came up more than once where they couldn't describe who they were accusing.
They were accusing people in far-flung places in New Hampshire and Maine and near the border of New Hampshire in Salisbury and Amesbury, and they had never been to those places. And the people from those places had never been to Salem Village that they were accusing, so they had never encountered each other.
There's
and
no
they were
Instagram.
supposed to identify them in court.
There's no Instagram. They can't just look and see, oh, Alden was here in Salem Village and this was him with his... Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. And they didn't have a police sketch artist doing drawings of what the girls said that they saw. So after this afflicted person did eventually point out Alden in the meeting house where he was being examined, the judges ordered everyone to go out into the street. And in his account, he says, all were ordered to go down into the street where a ring was made. And the same accuser cried out, there stands Alden, a bold fellow with his hat on before the judges. He sells powder and shot to the Indians and French, and lies with the Indian squaws, and has Indian papooses. Then was Alden committed to the marshal's custody, and his sword taken from him, for they said he afflicted them with his sword.
That is just a mindful. You could picture the chaos spilling out into the street. Captain Alden, dressed sharply with his hat, has his beautiful sword. They're pointing him out. Take his sword. It's crazy.
It forms a scene in your mind very easily, yes.
Yeah. Later, Alden was made to stand on a chair for all to see him.
Judge Bartholomew Gedney said he had known Alden many years and had been at sea with him and always looked upon him to be an honest man, but now he did see cause to alter his judgment. Alden answered he was sorry for that, but he hoped God would clear up his innocency, that he would recall that judgment again, and added that he hoped that he should with Job maintain his integrity till he died.
What about the touch test? Did he go through the touch test?
He did. The judges had the afflicted people, when he looked at them, they would be stricken and afflicted. They touch him, they're well. He looks at them, they're not good, but all they have to do is touch. The magic goes back into him and they're well again.
And that
So,
was court evidence.
and this was evidence used against him. Yeah. The evidence against John Alden was pretty thin, actually. There was one testimony of Mary Warren, and it was against George Burroughs, John Alden, Elizabeth Carey, and Ann Prudiator. So she's testifying against four people at once. The testimony goes, the testimony of Mary Warren, aged 20 years or thereabouts, testifieth and saith that sometime in July last, Mr. Burroughs pinched me very much and choked me almost to death. And I saw and heard him sound a trumpet. And immediately I saw several come to him, as namely Captain Alden, Miss Carey, and Goody Prudiator, and several others, and they urged me to go along with them to their sacramental meeting. And Mr. Burroughs brought to me bread to eat and wine to drink, which I refusing, he did most grievously torment me, urging me vehemently to write in his book. Also, I have seen Mr. George Burroughs, or his appearance most grievously tormenting, Mary Walcott and Ann Putnam, and I verily believe in my heart that Mr. George Burroughs is a dreadful wizard, and that he has several times tormented me and the aforesaid persons by his acts of witchcraft. So the one testimony that mentions Alden is primarily about George Burroughs. Alden just happens to be along for the ride to the sacrament. So there he goes to his witches' Sabbath.
Along for the ride to the Sabbath. So he's arrested and he goes to the Boston jail for 15 weeks. It's a whole season.
So while Alden was in jail on July 20th, 1692, there was a fast held at his house, at Captain Alden's house. This fast was held upon his account.
And this was the day after they hanged the first group of accused witches.
Yeah, this was after they hanged 5 of the accused witches, and they'd already done Bridget Bishop in June, but this is the day after a hanging, and you expect some of these people to have been at the hanging, but they probably weren't.
Cotton reported that Mr. Willard prayed, that he himself read a sermon out of Dr. Preston, and Captain Scottow prayed, Mr. Allen came in and prayed, and that Cotton and Captain Hill sung together the first part of Psalm 103. And they were there till 5 p.m.
Wow. Was that the same Captain Hill who got falsely accused and pointed at in the meeting house when they were asking who's afflicting you? It's the same guy. And he was probably praying for himself too.
Oh, yeah. Smart. You had to be at this point. Okay. So he spent 15 weeks in jail, and we have a couple sources that reports that Captain Alden escapes. Caliph says, observing the manner of the trials and the evidence then taken, which we've talked about, this crazy evidence, the touch test, the sword being bewitched, he prevailed to escape.
He may have been helped to escape by his minister, Samuel Willard.
While Samuel Willard was protesting what was happening, he wrote an anonymous satirical pamphlet about the witch trials. And he was preaching about spectral evidence.
Well, he wrote a pamphlet called Some Miscellany Observations. Alden, while he was escaped, apparently he was still in touch with some people back in the Massachusetts Bay province, because he seems to have been aware that the trials were winding down towards the end of the year. Because on December 31st, Alden appeared before Judge John Richards, who was one of the judges of the Court of Warrior and Terminer in Salem, but was also a judge locally in Boston. And Judge Richards released Alden on 200 pounds bond, which Alden paid along with Nathaniel Williams and Samuel Checkley.
John Alden was cleared by proclamation on April 25th, 1693, in Boston. The court record states John Alden of Boston, mariner who stood recognized for his appearance at this court upon suspicion of witchcraft being called, appeared and was discharged by proclamation.
So he escaped. He comes back on his own free will, knowing things are going well, and gets released on bond. So he's a free man to reside in his own home and do his own routine again while he waits for this day. And he comes in for like 2 minutes and they're like, "You're good."
How nice for him.
Nice for him. The Salem witch trials, he spent those 15 weeks in jail, which must have been miserable and a threat to his health and life because of the typhoid fever that was rampant in the jails. So he did suffer. He didn't get passed easily through the witch trials by any means. And then he had to hide with his relatives. So it wasn't an easy ordeal for him.
Yeah, it was like he was grounded from the coast. He wasn't out enjoying his boat.
That's right. No ship privileges for him while he's hiding out. Oh.
Yeah. Well, he, like many others, only lived a handful of years past the witch trials. He died on March 14th, 1702.
His gravestone can be visited in the Old South Church. It's in the portico. But you mentioned other people who had also lived only a few years after the witch trials. He made it about 9 years after the witch trials ended. But William Stoughton was already dead by 1702. Sheriff George Corwin, Anne and Thomas Putnam, Governor Phipps had passed, Francis Nurse had passed, James Howe, Captain Jonathan Walcott, the father of the John and Mary that we mentioned earlier in the show, Captain Bartholomew Gedney, the judge that had been friends with Alden but changed his mind, Reverend John Hale, who published a book called A Modest Inquiry into the Nature of Witchcraft, and Samuel Parris's wife, Elizabeth Sr. They had all passed away already within 10 years of the witch trials.
And so it really points out to me, too, how much Caliph's account, it was, who else was going to give an account besides Cotton? All of these people are fading away.
Right. And some of the books, like John Hale's book about the witch trials, was published after his death. So there you have it. The Alden family bridged two defining moments in early American history. John Alden Sr. signed the Mayflower Compact in 1620, helping establish the foundations of self-governance of the colonizers in the New World. 72 years later, his son, Captain John Alden, a charter member of one of Boston's most important churches and a decorated war hero, found himself accused of witchcraft in Salem.
The Alden story shows us that the Panic of 1692 wasn't just about the vulnerable or marginalized or just women. It could reach anyone, even the most prominent colonial families with significant Mayflower credentials. Captain Alden's experience reveals both how far the accusations reached and how someone with resources, connections, and sheer audacity could navigate the deadly machinery of the trials and survive.
From the deck of the Mayflower to a Salem courtroom, the Aldens witnessed and shaped the earliest and darkest chapters of New England history. Have a great today, and a beautiful Thanksgiving.